Well, my father, the last number of years of his life, he passed away about a year ago, but probably 4 or 5 years before he passed away, became a pretty fearful person. One of the things he was afraid of is that people would steal his stuff. Now, honestly, he didn't have a lot of stuff, and the stuff that he did have, I don't think you'd really want to steal anyway, but he did have this shed. And this shed, he kept his most valuable possessions in it. A lot of tools that he had. My dad had been like a maintenance mechanic his whole life, and so he had a lot of stuff, and so that's the shed right there. You see the shed? There it is. Now, you can't see it real clearly, but there are 3 locks on the front of that shed on those doors. The reason there are 3 locks on the front of those doors is because he had heard, they lived in a retirement community, they had heard that there were bad people. They had heard there were bad people that were coming and stealing stuff. And then lo and behold, sure enough, to his tremendous fear, somebody broke into the neighbor's shed. Yep. And so my dad went out at like 87 years old, and he bought a couple other locks, and he put those on that shed. And then he thought, they could still probably break into my shed. Now, my dad is a pretty creative person. Now, toward the end of his life, he didn't exactly think logically all the time, but what he decided to do was he not only had locks on the outside, he decided, with the ingenious mind that he had, he rigged up a system that he would tie a rope to the inside of the door. He drilled a hole in the backside of the shed, and the rope went through the backside of the shed, and he would wind it around back there, thinking apparently that if you're a thief, you never just check the back of the place you're going to break into. And so even if they busted the 1, 2, 3 locks, they still wouldn't be able to get it open because it was tied with a rope. Yes! And I am proud to tell you that not one time did one of those bad people come and steal his stuff. So it worked. There are a lot of thieves around. As a matter of fact, the average home that's broken into will lose the value of $2,337 worth of stuff. You say, what exactly are people taking when they break into homes? I'm going to help you out this morning. Now, some of you might have this stuff, some of you don't have this stuff. The number one thing that bad people, you with me? When they break into your home that they steal is money. So if you don't have any money, just put a sign out on the front of your door. Save a lot of hassle for you and him and the police. You don't have to worry. Just put, look, we ain't got nothing inside here. Okay, you could do that. Second thing that people steal, the most popular thing, is jewelry. So here's the thing. About every other Tuesday, I lose my wedding ring. It's the only piece of gold that I have. I lose it. So if you come and steal it, you're actually helping me out because you have found it. I have been searching for it for a long period of time, so I'm cool with that. The third thing that people typically steal is, I thought this was a fun one, clothing and furs. Well, I don't have a fur. And really, look at me. Do you really think you're breaking into my house to steal my clothing? We are safe. There's no need to worry about that. One of the things that is stolen is laptops. Now, I do have a laptop. It's an Apple. It's a Mac. It's a MacBook Pro. If you steal that, those are fighting words. I will come after you. You can have my money. You just cannot have my... I will beat you silly with a baseball bat or anything. I'll get Carol to chase you. She will bite you in the ear. Do not steal my computer. Next thing that people steal is TVs. Now, nobody has small TVs anymore. So if you're a thief, you have to steal in tandem. You have to have a partner just to carry the TV out of the house, because it used to be the TV was this big. Now it's like, yeah, you can carry that thing out. You deserve to have it, okay? I can't even go to Walmart and carry it out. So, they have to give me a cart and the whole deal. And then the last thing that people are primarily stealing is weapons, mostly guns, firearms. I'm thinking, if you're coming into my house to steal a firearm, you should know I can use that. My neighbor is an officer, a policeman in Baltimore, And one of the things that he told me, he said, look, when I was telling him, hey, I just got this gun, and I'd never shot a gun before, and I was going places and practicing, bang, bang, bang. And he goes, look, I'm going to give you a tip. Do not shoot for their head. And I'm thinking, why? He goes, shoot for body mass. And then he gave me a tip. This is an officer. He said, as long as they're moving, keep shooting. I'm going, he just stole my TV. I just wanted to wound him a little bit so he couldn't run with the thing. There are all kinds of stuff that people are going to break into your home and my home potentially. Certainly not my dad's place because he has that rope lock, but they're going to try and get into your house and my house or your shed or my shed or your garage or my garage or your car or my car, and they want to steal your stuff. Now, if they steal your stuff, that's called a bad day. That is called a bad day. I mean, it's going to be a major hassle and you've lost valuable things, but that is not primarily what I want you to be concerned about today. I want you today to be concerned about thieves breaking into your heart and stealing your satisfaction, your peace, your contentment, and your joy. Because if we really think about it today, here's the question. Do you really have satisfaction? We've been talking about it for weeks. Do you have it? Do you really have joy? Do you really have peace? Do you really have contentment? Because thieves are going to come your way and they are going to try to steal your joy, your peace, your satisfaction, and your contentment. And I want to encourage you today as we look into the life of Joseph, because 4 thieves came into his life, into his heart, and they knocked on the door and they broke the door down and they tried to steal his satisfaction. They're going to do the very same thing to you. And then at the end of the talk today, I want to give you God's security system to make sure that even when the thief comes, they can't steal your satisfaction, your joy, your contentment, and your peace. So with that in mind, look at Roman number 1 in the program that we gave to you when you came in. Here it is. Thieves can steal your satisfaction. They will try to come in and steal your satisfaction. We've looked at John chapter 10 and verse 10, and quite frankly, we have been looking at the second portion of the verse, John chapter 10 and verse 10, where Jesus said this. He said, look, I have come as the shepherd. I have come as the shepherd that you can have life and that you can have it to the full, that it runs over, that you have this abundance of satisfaction. But he said there are thieves that are also coming your way. That's the first part of the verse. John chapter 10 and verse 10, he says, look, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. No thief comes with your best interest at heart. No thief comes and knocks on your door and goes, I just wanted to serve you because I've heard that you're wasting a lot of time watching TV. I'd like to steal your TV. No, they don't do that. They come to harm you. And Jesus, in essence, is saying, look, there are all kinds of thieves that are out there, and they want to steal your satisfaction. So what are those thieves? First one in your notes, all 4, by the way, are found in the life of Joseph, and we're going to delve into that today. The first one is this. Bitterness can steal your satisfaction. Bitterness can steal your satisfaction. Bitterness is the idea of hanging on to an offense with hope that somehow or another you can do retribution, you can get revenge. And don't you just for a moment, in a moment of weakness, aren't there moments when you're thinking, I would really like to do something to that person. And if you hang on to that long enough, it becomes bitterness. Malcolm Forbes said this, keeping score of old scores and scars, keeping score of old scores and scars, getting even and one-upping always makes you less than you are. Bitterness will ruin your life. You'll replay that hurt over and over and over and over again. It'll rob you of the satisfaction that you can find. If you have your copy of the scriptures, look at Genesis chapter 37. It's on page 27. Genesis chapter 37, it's when we meet Joseph. Genesis chapter 37, this is what it says in verse 3. Listen to these words. Now Israel, whose other name was Jacob, that's Joseph's father, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. Now let me just ask you a question. How many of you, just be honest, how many of you were your parents' favorite kid? Raise your hand. Yeah, and I know there's some siblings in here right now. You're going, really? You had to do that in public? Really? Well, he is his dad's favorite kid, and his brothers know it. And you talk about sibling rivalry. It's going to happen. Here's what it says. He was his favorite kid because he'd been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. And if you grew up going to Sunday school or vacation Bible school, you heard about the coat of many colors. And as a kid, I thought, wow, like a psychedelic coat, man, sort of cool. That's not what it was. It was a coat of many colors. It was an ornamental coat because it was a sign to his brothers, he's different from you. It was a long coat, went down past the knees, and it was many colors because there weren't any fur pelts that were large enough to go that distance. And so what it would say to his brothers is, you never, ever, ever have to work a day in your life. You're special. And the other brothers are going, we're losers. This is not right. And so they were frustrated at him. It says in verse 4, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him. They hated him. And they could not speak a kind word to him. Now, Joseph has a dream, and quite frankly, there are some times you just ought to keep it to yourself. Joseph, a young buck, doesn't have a whole lot of discernment. He has a dream. It says this, verse 5, Joseph had a dream. When he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. You go, why? He just shared a little dream. He's just taking a nap, had a dream. And he goes, okay, here's my dream. He says, listen to this dream that I had, guys. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Well, your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. In other words, he's going, I am number one. You guys are like number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 brothers. How do they respond to that? His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Who in the world do you think you are? Will you actually rule over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. So, his brothers, remember I said earlier that he didn't have to work. He didn't really have a job. He has this long ornamental coat. And his dad comes to him and goes, hey, the boys are over at a place called Shechem. I want you to go check them out. And he goes, that's right, I'll go check them out. I'll go see how it's going. Barney Fife right there. That's what he's going to be, Barney Fife. That's right, I'm going to go check them out. And so that's what he does. It says this, verse 12. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem. And Israel, or Jacob, said to Joseph, as you know your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem, I'm going to send you to them. And he goes, very well. Verse 18. And when they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. This is called massive sibling rivalry. They're not just going to slap him silly. We're talking, let's kill him. Let's end this thing. And they said, look, here comes the dreamer. Come, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. A cistern was basically a well that you'd be able to get water out of to water your flocks. And they go, hey, let's drown the little sucker. He deserves to be dead. Look at the coat he's wearing. Verse 20, let's kill him and then we'll go home and we'll say that a ferocious animal devoured him. And then we'll see what comes of his dreams. They got some issues here. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him and said, well, let's not take his life. Let's not shed his blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. His plan was to come back for him later and rescue him. Verse 23, so Joseph came to his brothers. They stripped him of his robe, which they're going to take back to his dad, put some blood on it, go, hey, sorry, Dad, but obviously a wild animal got a hold of, Super Coat Boy, and, he's dead. We're sorry to tell you that. We're going to bring his body back, but it's eaten. He's gone. It says, and they took him and they threw him in the cistern, in this dry cistern. It was empty, and there was no water in it. You go, well, at least he didn't drown. Yeah, that's true. But it's a dry well. Somebody throws you down a dry well, you're going to go, thump, 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 thump. It's going to hurt when you get to the bottom of that. Now, obviously, he's a young kid. He's probably high school age kid at this point in his life. He probably just sort of shut up and not shared the dream. But what was he thinking about when he's at the bottom of that well? He has a potential opportunity to be bitter for the rest of his life. Now, he will be rescued because there's more to the story, 13 more chapters. But wouldn't it be easy just to hang on to that? He decided he wasn't going to do that. There's a book about General Robert E. Lee called The Last Years. And in the book, the author talks about an experience that Lee had after the Civil War, where he went down to Kentucky and he's dealing with a woman and she says, "Look at that tree. It was a grand tree. And now look at it. It's all shot up by the north and the branches are ruined and the trunk is ruined and it's going to die." And she is hoping, since he had been a general from the South, that he would somehow have compassion for her and he would somehow enter into her grief and her bitterness. And he said to her this. These are really good words. He said, "Cut it down, my dear madam, and forget it. Cut it down, my dear madam, and forget it." You know what God says to you in regards to people who have harmed you? He says, look, get past it. Get past it, because it will kill you. It will harm you in a major, major way. Bitterness is an opportunity that's going to come your way sooner or later, or let's be honest, it's already been knocking on your door in regards to this or this or this. God says to you, cut it down. Get rid of it. Face it, talk to me about it, but don't hold it in the back of your mind and review it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Bitterness will steal your satisfaction. There's a second thief that comes rather quickly on top of that. Number 2 in your notes, crushed dreams can steal your satisfaction. Crushed dreams can steal your satisfaction. Some of us, if we're really honest, our lives have not turned out the way we wanted them to. Some of us have dealt with incredibly sorrowful, difficult things. Some of us are struggling day after day after day with contentment stuff. Satisfaction wouldn't be a word that would describe us. Shortly after he's thrown down into the pit, Genesis chapter 37, verse 25, it says this. These are a group of loving brothers. Listen to these words. As they sat down to eat their meal, they're going, "Hey, let's have lunch. We just sort of threw our brother down into the pit, and hopefully he's going to die soon. Let's have lunch." So as they're sitting down, they see a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels are loaded with spices and balm and myrrh, and they're on their way to take them down to Egypt. Now, Judah, one of the brothers, says, "Hey, got me an idea right here. Come," he says, "let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all," catch this phrase, "he is our brother. We're not going to kill him. Let's make him a slave. Because killing him would be over too quickly for him. He doesn't deserve that. Let's make him hate his life every day for the rest of his life. Let's sell him into slavery." And so they do. They sell him for 20 shekels of silver, by the way. A very interesting thing. Why 20 shekels of silver? 20 shekels of silver was the going rate for someone who was sold into slavery that was crippled. He's been thrown down into the well. He's probably broken bones. They pull him back up and they're going, "Well, he can't even work. I mean, look at that leg. It sort of looks like he played in the NFL, right? His leg is going, whoa, that's a weird look. That's not good." 20 shekels of silver. They sell him into slavery. Chapter 39, this story gets picked up. He's now in Egypt. It says this. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, who is an Egyptian, and worked for the Pharaoh, was one of his officials, a captain of the guard, bought him. And then it says something really interesting, verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with him. Wouldn't it be easy to think, you know what, where's God in all of this? Have you been down that road? Where's God in all this? Because if he really cared about me, he wouldn't be putting me through this. Where in the world is God in all of this? He's a slave. Things are not good. He was given this dream by God that one day you're in essence going to save my people. Well, it certainly isn't looking like that today. To your position, and you will put the Pharaoh's cup in his hand just as you used to when you were his cupbearer. Now catch this out, verse 14. But when all goes well with you, when you're restored back, when all goes well with you, remember me and show kindness to me. Remember me. Don't forget. Don't forget, remember me. And he goes on to tell him, I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in this dungeon. Now the third day was the Pharaoh's birthday. He's having a party. He calls the chief cupbearer back to his position. The chief cupbearer, however, it says in verse 23, catch these words. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. He forgot him. There are times in your life, as well as in mine, you're just going to feel forgotten. You're going to feel like, God, where are you? You could have done something, but you didn't. You tell me, for instance, that you're going to give me a satisfying life, but quite frankly, I am not too satisfied right now, God. I've gone through all of this stuff. Where in the world are you? But Joseph didn't do that. You know why? Despite the fact that he had gone through 3 thieves, and then the 4th that comes, he decides, I'm still going to trust you, God. I am still going to trust you. So here's the question. How in the world do you trust God when those thieves have taken away your satisfaction, or at least tried to? How do you do that? Second point's really, really important. Here it is. Catch it with me. Roman numeral number 2. Be sure to turn on the security system you need to prevent satisfaction from being stolen. You and I need to be sure to turn on the security system that you need to prevent satisfaction from being stolen. Because I'm telling you, there will be thieves that are going to come knocking on the door of your heart. Opportunities for bitterness, crushed dreams, mistreatment, feeling forgotten. Those things will come into your life. But you don't have to let them kill you. God says, look, I'm going to give you a security system, and it's not 3 locks and a piece of rope that's tied to the back of a shed. I'm going to give you a security system that will help you to face those difficulties. You say, well, what does that look like? What would I need to do? The first thing is this. Number 1, be aware of the thieves that come to your neighborhood. Be aware of the thieves that come into your neighborhood. David, who loved God, who had been the king of Israel for a period of time, said this in Psalm chapter 40. And verse 12, he says, my troubles are without number. They surround me. My sins have overtaken me. I cannot see. They are more than the hairs of my head, and my heart fails within me. God, this is messed up. Have you ever woken up and just had that thought, and you're going, that's going to be a great day? Wow. Because if you're waking up with that feeling, the day's not going to get better as it progresses. But let's be honest, some days we do wake up and we're thinking, this is messed up, and this makes it worse. I have no hope that it's ever really going to change. Here's the thing you and I need to hang on to. God says, even in the midst of the messiness of your life, I'll take care of you. I might not remove the stuff, because just maybe I can use that stuff in your life to remind you to cling to me to find real satisfaction. There's a great verse in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1 is on page 844. And in that passage, he's just come out of spending all of chapter 11 talking about people who chose to trust God in the midst of difficulty. And now he says, okay, let's apply that to you. In chapter 12, verse 1, it says this, therefore, since we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, these people who have chosen to trust God and God took care of them, he says, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Catch that phrase, the race marked out for us. Most of us, we want to run the race we want to run. God goes, no. I want you to run the race that I have marked out for you. It's a pathway. I want you to be on that particular path. But then he says there are 2 things that will sidetrack you. You got to be aware of these. He says that you will get sidetracked because there are things that are going to hinder you. And he says there's also sin that can easily entangle you. The things that can hinder you, things that are not your fault. Circumstances of life that have come your way. I was outside about 2 weeks ago working beneath the deck at the back of my house. And I saw something that I'm sure I've seen thousands of times before, but it just mesmerized me. There was this gigantic spider This gigantic spider, the kind of thing that go, whoa, that's creepy, right? This gigantic spider that had this massive web. I mean, like a 4-foot long web. And then I saw something I never really ever saw before. I saw a little leaf about an inch and a half just sort of fall down ever so slowly and went into Mr. Spider's web. And I thought, that's going to be a problem. Because now all the little creepy crawler kind of things that you want to get into your web will go, oh, don't go there. That's a bad spider. And then that little spider, well, not little, he was about as big as a silver dollar. That little spider decided he was going to do something about the leaf. And I'm watching him going, what a dumb spider. He doesn't know that's not food. It's what we like to call a leaf, L-E-A-F. He went up and he attacked that thing. And I thought, dumb. I watched him for the next 45 seconds. You know what he did to that leaf? You go, Ed, you need to get a life. Well, a thief came and stole my TV, so really, I just had to watch the spider. I watched that spider, and he took his back legs, and he started kicking and kicking and kicking and kicking, and within 45 seconds, he had the leaf kicked out of his nest. You know why? He recognized that is going to ruin my life. If that thing's there, I don't get to eat. Now, you need to know something about your pastor. I'm ornery. So I picked up a leaf. Throw it in his nest, in his web. You know what he did? Same stinking thing. Within 45 seconds. I mean, this is like record time. So you know what I did? Picked up another leaf. Throw it into the web. It was amazing. I mean, I'm thinking, wow, this guy is amazing. And then this verse popped into my head. Because what he did is he recognized, look, let's throw off everything that hinders. Let's get rid of it. Let's get it out of here. It's bad. But you know what you and I do? We go, it's just a leaf. I can live with that. It's not that big of a deal. He decided, I can't live with that. That will mess up my life. That's what this verse says. Look, it says, throw off everything that hinders you. Here's the bullet point. So here's the question. What circumstances might turn off the security system in your life? What are the circumstances in your life right now that might turn off the security system? Because we're to throw off everything that hinders us. The word throw off has the idea of cast it into the garbage pile. It's no good. Cast it in there. Get rid of it. Throw it off. That phrase, everything that hinders, has the idea of this mass that ultimately will harm you. Get rid of it. So what circumstances are in your life that you need to give over to God and say, God, I can't handle this? You go, what would that look like? I don't know about you, but when I'm going through difficult times and there are circumstances in my life that, quite frankly, I can't handle, my inclination is to try to deal with it my way. And God goes, that's stupid. Not going to work. So what do you have to do? It says, Philippians chapter 4, it says this, verse 6. You might want to jot it down. Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. It says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Notice the phrase, with thanksgiving. He says, look, when you're going through tough times and you're stressed out about it, pray about it, petition God about it with thanksgiving, because you go, God, I can't handle this, but you can. So I'm going to choose today to trust in you. And then it says, verse 7, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, catch this next phrase, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. He doesn't say, I'm going to take care of all the stuff. He just says, I'm going to give you peace in the midst of that, and it will guard your heart. It'll take care of you. So that you can do what? So that you can run the race. You and I have to be aware of that. Second thing we need to be aware of, second bullet point is this. What fatal flaws might turn off the security system? What fatal flaws, sin habit patterns that you have or I have that keep cropping up might turn off the security system? He says, look, get rid of the sin that so easily entangles us. So easily entangles us. That's what sin does to you. It wraps its tentacles around you and it snuffs the life out of you. He says, look, just be aware of it. Be aware of it. Be aware that there are going to be circumstances in your life that you can't control. Cast those things over to God. But then he says, in relationship to things you can control, your sin habit patterns, which honestly we all have them, the fatal flaws of your life, he says, choose today to get rid of those things because you can get rid of them. Which takes us rather nicely to the next point. It's number 2 in your notes. Here it is. You've got to rely on the security system that God provides. Rely on the security system that God provides. He says, look, I've given you this security system. I will take care of you. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 2. He's just talked about don't get entangled in this. Cast that stuff to the side, whether it's your circumstances of life or foolish choices you've been making. And then he tells you what's really going to be the key. Here it is. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2. Fixing your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of your faith. Fixing your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of your faith. Remember, he's been talking about running the race. If you're running a race, what do? You got to fix your eyes on the end goal. I want to get there. Jesus says, look, I am the end goal. Fix your eyes on me. It'll remind you need to trust in me. And when you trust in me, I'll give you the kind of life I promised to give to you. I said, he says, that you can have this abundant life far more than you ever anticipated before. So here's the question. What are you going through right now? Circumstances that are beyond your control. What are you going through? What thieves are knocking at your door, the door of your heart, to take away the satisfaction that God wants to give to you? What are they? Are you willing to simply say, God, I'm going to cast them over to you. I'm going to choose to trust in you. You go, that makes no sense. Well, it makes far more sense than you and I would like to believe. Because in my world, what makes sense is that I logically think through it and come up with a plan and work it out. God laughs. He simply says, will you trust me? Now, that doesn't mean you don't do anything, but it means that you're going to trust him and you're going to work through the problem, the issue, the struggle, his way, not your way. Will you trust me? Will you trust me? Because at the end of the day, he loves you far more than you love yourself. If you just get one thing today, get that. God loves you far more than you love yourself. And he wants to give you a satisfying life far more than you want to have a satisfying life. But you got to choose. You got to choose to get it his way. He says, will you trust me? Will you fix your eyes on me? Because I don't know about you, but for me, an issue comes into my life, whether it's something I've caused or someone else has caused, you know what I tend to do? I stare at it. I concentrate on it. You know what God says? Knock that off. Stare at me. Look up, not down. I tend to look down. I tend to look down to the thing. God goes, no, don't do that. Look up at me. I'll take care of you. Will you trust him enough to rely on him day after day after day? And for some of us, quit trying to solve it our way. There are some of us in here that when we run into difficulties like that, we just shut down. Some of us, when we run into difficulties, we just try to work harder. God goes, neither of those are really going to work for you. He says, will you trust me? Will you rely upon me? I will take care of you. Might not change your circumstances, but I will give you peace that transcends anything you could ever possibly imagine. Will you pray? Will you petition me? Will you come to me? Here's the simple truth. There are many ways that your satisfaction can be stolen. There are many ways your satisfaction can be stolen. But there's only one way to safeguard your satisfaction. Here it is. Totally trust Jesus, who's the provider of the ultimate security system. Totally trust Jesus, the provider of the ultimate security system. God has a plan for you. He's a race marked out for you to run. Will you run it? Will you run it his way? Pray with me. Father, I really do thank you that you're never surprised by anything that comes our way. You're never shocked. And you choose to use difficult things in our lives as we cooperate with you. Would you take a moment right now and ask God to really speak to you about whatever difficult issue you're going through? Maybe you've caused it. Maybe it's a circumstance. And would you be bold enough to say, God, I'm going to choose right now to trust you. I'm going to choose right now to trust you. I'm going to cast this to you. Take a moment, allow God to speak to you about that, and then respond to him and tell him, God, I'll trust you. I'll trust you.